Hi, my name is James Brown, and I'm the founder of Vedic Path Meditation. Learning to meditate was the most profoundly positive step I took in helping me to be able to enjoy and fully live my life. And this video is the first step in you learning the practice of Vedic meditation, which is one of the most powerful stress-relieving tools available. In this video, we're going to talk about what the practice is, where it comes from, what it's for, how it differs from other practices like Buddhism and mindfulness that you might have heard of or tried. You'll also learn about what the benefits of the practice are, what some of the things that the people who've been doing it for a while say, and how it's impacted their lives. And then for those of you who want to go forward, we'll talk about how you learn, what the course is structured like, and what the next steps in learning might be. Often people want to know, why did I learn to meditate? What was the situation in my life that led me to pick up this technique and begin to make it part of my day? And then why did I decide to become a teacher? In my mid-30s, which is about 20 years ago, I reread the book Siddhartha, and it's a great book. It's the story of Buddha as a teenager, kind of a coming-of-age story. And I put it down and I thought, oh, it's a great book. And then the next thought I had was, I bet there's a really interesting girl out there who'd be more interested in me if I meditated. So that was the spur that got me onto a spiritual path. It was like to meet interesting women, which is a fantastic goal. It led me to my wife, who's a wonderful woman. But it's probably not the spur that put the Dalai Lama on his spiritual path. And so I went from that idea into Buddhism. I leapt into Buddhism because I thought Buddha invented meditation. I mean, his statue is in all the cool people's gardens, all the yoga studios, and so I tried a year of different Buddhist practices. And I worked hard at it. I tried Soto Zen, Zazen, I tried sitting in that very particular way, holding my posture erect, trying different cushions and things. I tried focusing on my breath, timing breaths, counting breaths. I tried contemplating love and kindness, staring at candles, acknowledging thoughts and let them go. And I have to say, after a year of flailing, really, is the best word for it, I gave up, convinced that I couldn't meditate. I liked a lot of the ideas of Buddhism, but I just felt I couldn't do it. And so, having given up that I would be able to meditate, I went on with my life. And, was for the most part happy, successful, although in retrospect I realized I lived most of my adult life on the surface of my life, not wanting to go any deeper. And I met a woman and we got married and tried to have kids and couldn't have kids, which was its own stress-related endeavor. And so we turned to adoption. And we have two beautiful sons, Logan and Joshua, through that amazing institution of adoption. And because we did open adoption, we were there for the birth of both our boys. And I remember when Logan was born, the day he was born, I was holding him in my arms and I felt this incredibly powerful wave come up and just smack me in the face. And it said, you have to be a better person. Now, I don't know if I was a bad person, but I certainly had my doubts about myself. I thought at my core I was this flawed individual and just best not to go there. And so right on the heels of that very powerful idea came that voice. And I don't know what you call that voice. I call it the witness for the prosecution. It's that undermining, undercutting voice that tells us that we suck, that we don't deserve happiness. It often doesn't have our back. And it rises up most, it seems, when we're under stress or under pressure. And I heard that voice loud and clear. And that created a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety. And it led to a swirling, chaotic kind of life where I didn't know if I was going to be able to be a good dad. And my marriage wasn't in great shape and I had a terrible job. And it was in that situation with so much going on that I read on a friend's blog that he practiced Vedic meditation. And then it worked for him. And I called him up. I said, dude, you don't seem like a spiritual guy. He says, I'm not. This is a technique. It works for me. You should check it out. I said, well, tell me more. He says, I can't. I'm going fishing, but they're giving a talk at my house. My teacher's in town. He's giving a talk at my house. You should go. And so I went. And I liked what I heard. I decided that I wanted to do it. I convinced my wife to learn with me, so we learned together, which was a fantastic experience to share. And one thing I heard at that introductory talk that really stuck with me was that Vedic meditation was considered to be the householder's technique, meaning it was meant for people in the world with stuff and jobs and relationships and sex and the complications of that. It's a funny term, householder, but it means one who holds house. And it's an old term. It's sort of like landlord. Landlord means, they're the lord of my land. I pay them tribute. But it really meant that it was a practice that was meant for people with the kind of life that I was leading. Most of what we know of as meditation comes to us from monastic traditions, Buddhism, those kinds of things. And monks have beautiful lives of austerity and simplicity, and there's much beauty and truth to be found along that path. But it's not my life. And it seemed to make sense to me that a meditation practice that was developed 2,500 years before Buddhism, this is a very ancient tradition, that something that was developed for people in the world would work better for people in the world. So, what is Vedic meditation? Well, a good place to start is what it's not. It's not a religion, there's no chanting, you don't have to sit in uncomfortable positions for a long time, it doesn't have to be dark or quiet, you don't have to change your diet or throw away half your stuff. It's just a simple mental technique that was designed to allow the mind to effortlessly settle through layers and layers of consciousness until we can access that deeper layer of calm and quiet that lies within all of us. So that's what Vedic meditation is, that's where it comes from, but really, what does it mean to meditate in the Vedic style? Well, first, and this is the good news, you sit comfortably, meaning in a chair with back support, on a couch, or maybe in bed, leaning against your headboard, but you sit comfortably, not in that typical meditator position. And if you're ever uncomfortable, you move. We're not trying to retain any sort of postural acuity. We can, as I say, slouch our way to enlightenment. And if you have an itch, you can scratch it. And then we close our eyes, and it doesn't look like much when you're doing it, and then you begin to think a mantra. Now, the word mantra is an interesting one. It tends to mean something that's repeated a lot. The Republicans have a mantra, the Democrats have a mantra. And there are lots of different types of mantras that are used in different types of meditation techniques. The mantras we use in Vedic meditation have some interesting qualities. The first is that they have no meaning. And it's curious, why would that be important? It's because if you have a mantra that has meaning, you can think about it. And if compassion is your mantra, then you sit and think about all the ways in which you could be more compassionate to others. And then I guarantee you will start thinking about all the people not being so compassionate to you. And then you start thinking about how you might respond to those people and what you might do. And you get on that very familiar path of taking thinking into action to accomplish something. And we have a lifetime of training in how to do that. In this practice, what we're doing is having an exploration of the source of thinking. And I remember the first time I heard that phrase, I was just mesmerized by it. What is the source of my thinking? Where do my best ideas come from? Where do I come from as a consciousness event? And if we have a mantra that we can think about, we have a tendency to go this way, and in Vedic meditation, we want to go that way. So the mantra has no meaning. And then because you're going to be trained to use the mantra over the next few course sessions in a way that strips away all of the jobs we normally give the mind, which is to focus, concentrate, remember what you're doing, assess your performance. If you find your performance wanting, you apply more effort. Then you assess the application of effort, and then you either pat yourself on the back because you're doing a good job, or you beat yourself up because you're doing a bad job and you think, I can't meditate, this is stupid. Don't I have something better to do? And when we introduce this kind of a mantra and use it in this simple, effortless, innocent way, what we find is really wonderful is that our minds happily begin to settle away from the busy surface of the mind with all our distracting thoughts and all our worrisome problems and troubles, all our feelings and thoughts about those feelings and feelings about those thoughts, and begins to settle into deeper and quieter and calmer layers of consciousness effortlessly. And the good news is you don't have to try to stop your mind from thinking, which would be impossible anyway. When people come and say that they wish they could just shut their minds up so they could be happy, what they really mean is they're just stuck in that negative layer of brain chatter, the surface of the mind. Because if we shut our minds up completely, we would also cut ourselves off from all the good, loving, creative thoughts that we have, which also rise up spontaneously in the mind. And that's not what this practice is about. It's not about yelling at the mind to be quiet. It's about allowing the mind to settle. And allowing something to happen is a lot easier than making something happen. Okay, so that sounds nice, but really, why meditate? What are the reasons that you would choose to add this kind of a technique and take time away from your busy day to do it? Well, to start with, there are two things that any practice worthy of being described as meditation will do for us, and they are to polish and expand the lens of consciousness through which we experience all of life. I think it's a fair statement to say that nothing will more profoundly and positively affect your enjoyment of life than your state of mind. And what we're talking about really is being more present, more open and available to all of what life offers. And the sad truth is that for a lot of people, we spend way too much of our time not being present. And we know that when we're not present, we have a degraded experience of life, because you can't be a good listener, a good lover, a good chef, a good parent, a good anything if you're not present, if you're trapped in that distracted layer of thinking, of worrying about this and speculating about that and trying to pay attention but having a difficult time. In fact, a couple of years ago, they did a study at Harvard that documented this. They found that the average American adult was what they called utterly lost in thought 47% of the time, meaning they were stuck in the surface of the mind, unable to access those deeper layers of consciousness. So why is that? There are two reasons, and meditation can help with both. The first is that we're always doing. We are this relentlessly productive culture. There's a great New York Times article a couple of years ago called "Are You Stuck in the Busy Trap?" And yes, we are. We have this idea that we should just always be busy doing something. And so as a consequence, we're incredibly productive, but we've lost the ability to be present and happy. And as it turns out, always being on is an incredibly stressful way to live. And stress is the second reason and the biggest reason why we have such a hard time being present, why we have these agitated minds. It's because stress is an inflammation. It's an agitation in the body that then creates agitation in the mind. But stress is not in the world. Stress is our response to the world. And when we're full of what scientists call adaptation energy, then we can meet the demands of life with equanimity, with humor, with insight, inventiveness. If you ask people what's stressful in their life, they'll name things. My dog, my neighbor's dog, my relationship, my ex-relationship, my job, my boss, my commute. But really, these are just demands. These are things that life puts in front of us that we have to deal with. And when we're stressing out about something, it's because we've encountered some situation which, rightly or wrongly, we've decided we have to run from or fight. Now, if the situation we're facing is truly a life or death situation, then a stress response is the best thing that could happen. It saved our life as a species for millennia. But the truth is that most of the times we get stressed out, it's not in response to some life or death situation. It's just in response to some ordinary life situation that we can't handle. Why? Because stress drains us of that bank of adaptation energy. And one of the most insidious things about stress is that the more stressed we are, the easier it is to get even more stressed than that. You know, we talked about how stress is an inflammation. Let's say there's a dial, a stress dial, and you're at 5. It's an average day. And then something happens that you don't handle well. Some demand is placed upon you, and it could be something like an email you get from a client or a friend that then you have a negative reaction to, and it tips you to 6. The truth is that something that now happens that you could have handled when you were at 5, you can't handle because you were at 6, and then you tend to go to 7, and then 8. And as the dial continues to wind this way, then everything in life gets worse. Our health, our happiness, ability to regulate our emotions, our sleep, our digestion. And so if we can find a practice, a technique that allows the dial to go the other way, then everything in life can get better. And a practice of Vedic meditation is that, because you can replenish those banks of adaptation energy, you can put yourself in a position where, having accessed that quiet and calm that lies within, you're more grounded, more able to handle the challenges of life. The very first studies ever done on this type of meditation found states of restfulness that were deeper than anything you achieve in a night's sleep. That's amazing. And it's one of the reasons why people who learn to meditate in this style quickly begin to report that they have more energy, more clarity, more of a capability to deal with the demands of life in ways that don't require stressing out about it. They can simply handle situations better and more happily, and life proceeds more smoothly along that path. And it's important to add this note that we're not talking about avoiding high stakes, high pressure situations, first dates, having a child, interviews, auditions, big sales presentations. We're not trying to live lives of detachment. We're not trying to live like monks where we pull away from life. What we want to be able to do is live our busy, involved lives, but in a way that allows us to meet those high stakes, high pressure situations and see them as challenges that we can bring our best to, as opposed to seeing them as threats from which we have to run away from or fight. Now, this is what people sort of tell me anecdotally when I get reports back from people who've learned to meditate and they say, life is just moving more freely. I feel a little looser. I feel lighter in a way that didn't imply that they knew that they were heavy. It's because what they found is a technique that allows them to, as I said, polish and expand that lens of consciousness, to clean up the distortion and aggravation and irritation that stress causes. And when we're less aggravated and less irritated, then we can bring more of our best to more of our life. So that's why, on a general level, it might be worth incorporating a daily practice of Vedic meditation into your life. Now, there are lots of other benefits, lots of other reasons to meditate. In fact, so many people are coming to learn to meditate because, as they say, science is proving it works. In fact, what's great about that is that it worked thousands of years before science could prove it, but now that's giving a lot of people the permission to come and learn a practice like Vedic meditation. And every day, there are new studies published about the benefits of daily practice. There's lower rates of depression, of alcoholism, of faster recovery from addictions, better sleep, lower blood pressure, less incidence of heart disease and cancer, fewer sick days. The list really does go on and on and on. But there's a couple studies I like to talk about. The first is that meditators score really, really well on what's called tripartite decision-making tests. Now, these are the kinds of tests they give fighter pilot candidates in Air Force academies. And it's a test of your ability to do three things: to make accurate decisions under pressure and stay calm. And you can see why that would be a really useful skill as a fighter pilot. But it's also a really useful skill as a parent, as a business owner, as a person on this planet. And the reason meditators do really well at it is because they've managed to find a way to cleanse their system of the distortion that stress causes. They're able to be more present, more in the moment, pick up more of the information the moment is delivering. The second study measured the impact that meditation has on slowing and, for a while, in some people, reversing the aging process. This was one of the first studies done on this technique in the late 60s, and they brought 1,000 meditators in and 1,000 non-meditators and measured them all in terms of their biological age. And this is an index of how vital you are. It's how much air you can blow in a balloon, and skin elasticity, and hair follicle strength, lactase levels in the bloodstream, calcium uptake in the bones. It's really a measure of how alive you are. And the idea was, depending on how you've lived, you could either be younger or older than your birthdays. What they found is that non-meditators over a 5-year period increased their biological age, a measure of how vital they were, how alive they were, by 1.2 to 1.3 years for every calendar year. The meditators who were studied over the same 5 years had reversed their biological age an average of 8 years. Now, when my wife heard about this, she was like, how much am I spending on European skin creams and exfoliating ointments? I'll try that. And you know, I wish that it were 4 years, because it would still be amazing, but maybe it'd be more believable. But the reason we can believe it is two things. The first is how powerfully stress affects us. It affects everything about us: our digestion, our reproductive function, our rate of aging, and its effects are negative and harmful. The second powerful truth is that our bodies are healing machines. Your body has amazing systems on board to bring it to what's called homeostasis, optimum operating function. And if you give them a chance to run, incredibly powerful, positive things will result. Vedic meditation is taught in a series of 4 sessions of about 90 minutes in length, taken once a day for 4 days. On the first day, students bring fruit and flowers, and there's this beautiful ceremony in Sanskrit. Now, I should tell you, if you hate ceremonies, you'll love it because it's short and sweet and you don't have to do anything. You just witness it. In fact, it's not even a ceremony for you, it's a ceremony for me. It's a long list of teachers, great masters of this tradition going back 5,000 years. And it's to awaken all that in my consciousness and to remind me that I'm not in the song. This isn't my branded content that, my teacher learned it from his teacher, who learned it from his teacher, who learned it from his teacher. And it goes back a long, long time. And when I became a teacher, I swore an oath to present it, to teach people in the same pure way it's been taught for millennia. Then I'll take each person aside and give them their mantra. Then once everyone has their mantra, we'll sit, close the eyes, and I'll lead the class through a series of steps of shorter and a little bit longer and a little bit longer periods of meditation with instruction in between. And then after a last longer section of meditation, then we'll have a question and answer period where everyone gets to report on what that experience was, and I'll give you the instructions needed to then go do your homework. And your homework is going to be to meditate again in your life, to give it a try at home or at work, and then come back the next day and report on that. On day 2, you'll come back and we'll talk about the movement of the mind in meditation. This is the practice of effortlessly allowing the mind to settle. What does that mean? What does it mean to be effortless? What are we allowing? What do we mean by the mind settling? Why does the practice work at all? And then we meditate again together. In fact, we meditate every session together. Then more homework. And on day 3, you'll come back and we'll take a deep dive into the physiology of meditation, the impact the practice has on the body. And because the mind and body are completely connected, how that affects the mind. And what we're really talking about that day is stress. We'll talk about the mechanics by which stress accumulates in the body. I mean, who here doesn't have a place where they hold stress in their body? Mine is right here, right? That's a crazy thing to say. I hold emotional and mental stress here. So if we can accumulate stress, then we can release it. And how does that happen? And when it's happening, what does that do to change the experience of meditation? Then more homework, and you'll come back, and on day 4, the last day of the course, we'll recap everything. As you'll see, we cover a lot of information on the course. It's fascinating stuff. And we'll recap that, and then we'll set you on the path. This is a path. It goes somewhere. Where does it go? What are the consequences of being a daily meditator? And then what are some tips and strategies and tactics for making that a reality? And then finally, what we talk about on that last day is the support program. You also can attend free group meditations. There's lectures, knowledge meetings. You'll also receive a series of 16 weekly emails to support you as you're beginning to integrate this new habit into your day. Let's just say there's a lot of support to help put you on the path, keep you on the path, and help you deepen your practice as you go. So we've come to the end of this introductory video. That's what Vedic meditation is. That's a little bit about who I am as a teacher. Those are some of the benefits you can expect if you learn and make this part of your life. And if you want to learn, that's how you can learn. If you're interested in going further, the next step is to send an email to info@vedicpathmeditation.com, and we'll take it from there. So thanks for your time. In closing, I'd just like to leave you with one thought. Maybe it's because I'm a dad, but I talk a lot about kids and parenting and how being a dad has helped me see the world in a completely new way. And one of the really fun things about little kids, and people will talk about it at birthdays or at Christmas time, is that how kids can play with the box and not the toy. And it's true, they can sit for 20 minutes and play with the box, climb inside the box, play with the wrapping paper, the bows, and leave the toy on the side. And I thought, how awesome is that? What would that be like as an adult? It would mean being able to enjoy being in line at the grocery store, even when you have the slow cashier, as much as the meal you'd make with that food. It would mean being open and available and present for more of your life. Learning the practice of Vedic meditation puts you on the path of being able to be more present for more of your life, of being able to bring more of your best to life, of being able to show up for the stuff that really matters. And if you've been inspired by this video, if you'd like to learn, it would be my sincere honor to teach you. Thanks.